Okay.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 1. My name is Muhammad Aryandika, and my partner is...
Yeah, my name is Refangga Agatis.
Here, we will present our material. It's all about what is method, changing winds and shifting sands, and also the early years. So without any further ado, let's get to the material. The first one. In English teaching process, there are terms that we need to know. There are approach, method, and technique. The first one, what is approach? Approach, based on the Edward Anthony said, approach is a set of assumptions that are dealing with the nature of language, learning, and also the teaching. In the simple way, approach is a kind of effort that are dealing with the relationship, bond, and also line to make the learning environment. The next one is going to be explained by my partner, Refangga.
All right. So before I start, this is just for your information. Edward Anthony has a notion that called hierarchy elements. So the first one is the one that Arya explained before, approach, and the second one is method, and the third one is technique. So what is method? According to Edward Anthony's perspective, method, he described method as an overall plan for systematic presentation of a language course based on a selected approach. And then, what is technique? Technique is the specific activities manifested in a curriculum that were consistent with a method and therefore is in harmony with an approach as well. So we can say that these three things is connected between each other. Next. So what is method? So as I mentioned before, a method is an overall plan for systematic presentation of language course based on selected approach. So we can assume that method is application of an approach in the context of language teaching. Next. The next explanation. The next is will be explained by Arya.
Okay, the next one, changing winds and shifting sands. In language teaching, there is nothing lasts forever. It means that there will be always a new change, there will be always a new method, there will be always a new development providement to improve the teaching style in language field. We cannot say one method is better than other, but it is better or more wise to say that every method has their advantages. So it's best on us which method we are going to use based on the situation we are going to deal with. Albert Marquardt, 1972, page 5, saw this changing winds and shifting sand as a cycle pattern in which a new method emerged about every quarter of a century. A good example of changing winds and shifting sands is ALM. What is ALM? ALM is audiolingual method. This method allows the learners to learn more about oral activities such as listening and speaking. Next, the next one is the early years. What is the early years mean? Here, the early years refers to a few of old school method in language teaching. So here we are going to explain some of that. The first one, classical and grammatical translation method. Classical method, teacher centered. It means the teacher is the captain, the teacher is the leader of the class, the teacher is the teacher who is going to uh, lead the activity of the class. So all of the activity is based on the teacher will. With memorization of grammatical rules and vocabulary, translation text and written experiences. So this method obligate the learners to memorize the grammatical rules and vocabulary also, translation text, and their main exercises is written exercises. There are few principles this method uh, there are a few principles we have to obey if we use this method. The first one, we have to focus on the grammatical rules and vocabulary. The second one, reading is our main activity to learn by using this method. The third one, translation text as the main exercises for the learners. And the fourth one or the last one, this method is not focused on the oral activities such as speaking or listening. So the disadvantage of this method is going to limit the learners. Also it will affect the learners confidence because of the learners are focused on the grammatical rules and vocabulary. It's not good for them, or it's bad for them if they are thinking to do oral activity freely because they are because they are have anxiety for using or for doing oral activity because they are thinking grammatical rules and vocabulary and also translation text that much. It will limit their free will or their freedom in oral activity. Okay, the next one, Guin series method. This method was found by Francis Guin, a French teacher of Latin. The series method, a method that taught learners directly without translation and conceptually without grammar rules and explanation. So it is completely different with the first one, right? Uh, this method is not thinking about the grammatical rules, the vocabulary, the translation, or even the explanation of the sentence that we are going to say, we are going to write, kind of like that. This method focus on the spontaneity of the learner. Guin believes the language learning is about converting perception into conception. So as long the conversation is understandable and also the speaker can understand what are the conversation talking about, it's called we can count it as language learning. So the main idea of Gwyn series is don't think about grammatical or explanation or translation, any kinds of it. Just focus what are we going to say, what are we going to convert our perception into conception to the other speaker, to the opposite speaker of us. Okay, the next one will be going explained by Refangga Thomas again.
All right, the next one is the direct method. So this method was found by Maximilian Berlitz. He is a German. Um, the basic premise of this method was that foreign language learning should be more like the first language learning, which is mean this method is consists of a lot of oral interaction and spontaneity, and there is no translation between first and second language. Um, this method emphasize or focus on the development of oral skill or speaking skill. In this method, the learners refrain from the learners native language and use only the language which the learners want to learn. Okay, next. All right, this is the audiolingual method. The characteristic of this course is a great deal of oral activity, including pronunciation drills, pattern practice, and exercises in rudimentary conversation with virtually none of the grammar and translation found in traditional classes. Um, this method is a method of foreign language teaching. Um, this method emphasized the reading of listening, I mean, emphasizing listening and speaking skills before we learn reading and writing skills. I think that's it for this method.
Okay, to sum
Next.
up, here are the main differences between every method that between any methods that we already explained before. The first one, grammar and translation method, focused on the reading and limit the freedom of the learner. I mean, limits the freedom of the learner. Here means the learners only going to to learn what the teacher is going to teach. The second one, growing series method, although it allows the learner to be more active without taking any kinds of grammatical rules in any skills. So Gwyn's let every learner who are using this method to to be more active, to talk actively, to write actively without thinking about the grammatical rules, translation, and also the explanation. As long the concept or the per as long the concept we are going to tell is understandable, it's okay. The third one is going to explain by Refangga Thomas again.
Okay, the direct method focus on the development oral skill, and this method refrain of using native language. And the last but audiolingual method emphasize the teaching of listening and speaking, then writing and reading. Okay, I think that's all.
Okay, I think that's all from us. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Cara convert kayak apa? Langsung stop recording aja kah? Sorry
Yeah,
kan? Langsung stop record aja.
yeah.
Oke, stop recording.
Habis itu